Now, the third biggest mistake I used to make was cold calling the meeting planner. Now, cold calling is generally a poor method for doing sales in any business, especially for an individual or small business. Now, remember how I said it's really useful to know what it's like from the perspective of the meeting planner? Well, when I was a meeting planner, I didn't like people who cold called me. I liked it when they came in warm. And I'll tell you what I mean by that in a moment. But all that said, I did actually love it when speakers contacted me with relevant information at the right time because, trying to choose the right speaker is a time-consuming, tricky job sometimes, and having a file of different speakers I could call on was great. So no need to be intimidated contacting them. Often meeting planners are volunteers, and so the easier you can make their life, the better, right? So how do you actually bridge the gap between you and the meeting planner? Well, I'm a big believer in researching the event. Now, this turns a cold call into a warm call. And I once booked a speaker, and he didn't do his research. And it turned out to be a disaster. People complained because it wasn't the right fit. Because meeting planners put their reputation on the line when they hire you. And people were saying things like, that was terrible, or like, who chose that guy? And I'm not coming back to these meetings. I mean, that totally puts my job on the line. Of course, in my early days of getting speaking engagements, I would cold call meeting planners from the stance of the beggar. Do you know what I mean by that? You wouldn't have any speaking engagements, would you? I didn't think so. Sorry for bothering you. Now, meeting planners are inundated with speakers who cold call them. So when you do your research, you stand out from the others, and especially if you come in wanting to make it a win-win. Don't come from a place of neediness, and don't come from a place of just trying to get something, but a desire to serve your needs and their needs so that you come across as a hero. You're a hero to them. People are happy that you came to speak. You make the meeting planner look good. So let's look at part 3 of your handout, Research the Event. So just choose one event from the list you made in part 2 and see if you can answer some of these questions. Now, you don't have to know all this, but the more the better. You can find out this information like on websites, social media such as LinkedIn is really great. You can also, as I said, call the coordinator, a board member, or someone who understands the organization. So here's what to know before calling. So let's use an example going through these areas to research. So I'll use the example of my big human resources conference, where I wanted to speak on the power of laughter, managing change with a sense of humor. So I need to know ahead of time what kinds of problems I can solve for them before I talk to the meeting planner. So in my case, how to create a culture of creativity that would turn around a toxic workplace, especially for organizations going through a lot of change. There tends to be a lot of stress during those times. So kinds of goals, of course, is once they change the culture, people are more motivated on the job, more enthusiastic, they get along better, there's more open communication. Now, the other thing you want to know is how long you get to present. So if you only get half an hour, you're going to be saying different things to them than if you get to do a 3-hour program, right? Because you can only cover so much in a shorter period of time. So I wanted to be one of the 90-minute keynote speakers. And so I know what I can cover in that time. Anticipated number of attendees is good to know. I knew that last year, from looking at the website, they had about 1,000 people. So I have to be clear to the meeting planner that I can engage a big group like that, because not everybody can. Voluntary or mandatory attendance. People tend to go to conferences on a voluntary basis, and so that's a different type of presentation than if it's mandatory attendance, right? Would I be the only speaker or one of many? Well, I'll be one of many, so I needed to know that ahead of time. And what do I think would be their attitudes toward my topic? Well, the power of laughter, usually people love it. But I knew another speaker on the agenda was talking about new government payroll regulations. And I mean, he knows people don't necessarily like the topic, but they have to attend because of their job. So roles and responsibilities of a typical attendee. Like, human resources people, I need to know what's involved in the day-to-day life of these kind of people and be able to make that clear to the meeting planner. And it is useful to know their age range. So it'd be mostly 30s to 50s. Now, I once spoke at an event where I was 30 years old and everyone in the audience was 70. Now, if I had known that ahead of time, I would have, chosen better stories and examples. Education level can be useful. Like mostly people in my audience would have a college degree. But sometimes I've spoken to groups where everybody has a PhD, right? Different wording, different examples. Other times I've worked with people who are illiterate. Again, visuals you use, what you say, makes a big difference. You have to let the meeting planner know that. What about income level? Well, in this case, probably most people would have a middle class income, but I've spoken to people in transition homes who are on welfare. I've also spoken to CEOs who all make, $1 million or more a year. And so again, how you speak to the meeting planner will help them see whether you're a good fit or not. Same with gender ratio. At a human resources event, I'm probably going to see 80% women. At the plumber and welder conference, 90% men. Now, diversity level and understanding of English or whatever language you're speaking in makes a big difference. I presented in India, Thailand, the Middle East, where English is a second language to a lot of people. So I need to make the meeting planner clear that I know that and that I know how to deal with that. Awareness level of my topic. So you may need to educate the meeting planner on what you're talking about. I've had a client who talks on blog curation. Well, what's that? Fun at work? Most people know what I mean. How often do they meet? Well, I know this is a once a year conference. And it's useful to know what other kinds of presentation speakers they've had on my topic before. And I saw from studying the website that 4 years ago they had a similar topic. So that's good. I know they appreciate my topic, but it's been a few years since they've had it on the agenda, so it was a good time to pitch it. Now, of course, if you can find out ahead of time what they're used to paying speakers, or if they don't pay speakers, what kind of in-kind offerings. Now, I found out from speaking to someone who'd been on the board before that they don't pay their breakout session speakers, but they do pay their keynote speakers. So that's why I was going for the keynote spot. But they don't pay as high as in other associations. So that helps me decide, what's going to be my bottom line, what I'm willing to receive for doing that keynote. The other thing is, can I make an offer to the audience? Can I sell books, for example? And I know they like it if you have books to sell that would be available in their bookstore. Sometimes they don't like that. You need to know that ahead of time, right? And what's really useful to know is, how do they make presenter decisions? Is it one person's decision? Is it a committee? Well, I found out that it's a committee of 4 people, and the program chair gets the veto. So that's the person I have to convince. Now, do you see how I'm going to feel so much more confident talking to the meeting planner with all this information under my belt? So all you do is fill in the action box at the bottom. I will research 3 potential speaking engagements by, and the date and the person that you're going to be accountable to. Now, you can do this. It's really simple. Even if you just do one, you're going to see that it's actually quite fun and interesting, and it'll make you want to do more. Now, it's really helpful to have some kind of sales database to track your meeting planner prospects. Now, I use FileMaker Pro, which is available on both the Mac and PC, and I had this customized for exactly what I wanted. There are fields for all the kinds of information I want to track, but most important for me is to be able to date stamp when to follow up. So I can just click a button that says callback list, and I will have a list of all the people I need to contact that day. Because sometimes the meeting planner will say, hey, we're not choosing speakers until mid-November. So I date stamp it for mid-November, right when they're looking. So they're excited to hear from me. If I try to talk about it to them in August, it's just an annoyance to them. So make sure you have some easy system for doing that. Now I have a second tab where I can list all the details of the event. And then a really important thing is to have a place where you can just track all your communication back and forth, and you can date stamp that. Because sometimes, I've spent 2 years going back and forth talking to a meeting planner, and I need to kind of look through all my notes before I talk to them, and then I come across as, far more knowledgeable. In a moment, we're going to talk about overcoming the 4th and 5th mistakes.